Burkina Faso has introduced a new policy that is generating debate across Africa and beyond. Under regulations adopted by the government led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, humanitarian organizations and NGOs are now prohibited from photographing or filming children and other vulnerable people in degrading or exploitative situations during aid distribution or for fundraising campaigns. Authorities say the goal is simple: to protect the dignity and privacy of vulnerable Burkinabè citizens. Supporters are calling it a bold step to end what they describe as the commercialization of African poverty. Critics, however, argue the restrictions could make it harder for aid organizations to document humanitarian crises and raise international support. So, what exactly has changed, and why is this decision attracting global attention? Let's find out. According to the new humanitarian regulations, organizations operating in Burkina Faso are no longer allowed to take, display, or public photographs and videos that portray vulnerable people, especially children, in a way considered degrading, humiliating, or exploitative. The government says humanitarian assistance should never come at the cost of a personal dignity. Officials argue that for years, images of African children suffering from hunger, displacement, and poverty has often been used in fundraising campaigns without protecting the privacy or informed consent of those being photographed. The regulations also require humanitarian organizations to obtain the necessary permissions before using photography or videos of aid recipients and encourage more ethical storytelling that respects the rights of these people receiving assistance. Burkina Faso is currently facing a severe humanitarian crisis caused by the years of insecurities and displacement, with millions of people in need of assistance. The government says protecting vulnerable people should remain a priority even during emergencies. From a Pan-African perspective, this decision touches on a much broader issue. For decades, many Africans have criticized what is sometimes referred to as poverty porn. The repeated use of distressing images of African children and struggling communities to attract donations or international attention. Supporters of Burkina Faso's policy argue that while humanitarian work is essential, African children should not become symbols of pity whose images are reportedly circulating around the world without meaningful consent or consideration of their future. They believe Africans deserve to be presented with dignity, not only through images of suffering, but also through stories of resilience, innovation, education, and development. Many Pan-African thinkers argue that changing how Africa is portrayed is part of changing how Africa is perceived. They say protecting the dignity of vulnerable children is consistent with its broader movement across the continent to promote self-respect, cultural confidence, and African-led development. At the same time, humanitarian organizations point out that photographs and videos often play an important role in documenting crises, informing the international community, and mobilizing emergency assistance. Many aid agencies maintain that responsible visual reporting can raise awareness while respecting ethics standards and the rights of those being photographed. The debate, therefore, is not whether vulnerable people deserve protection. There is a broad argument that they do, but rather how to balance dignity, privacy, transparency, and humanitarian advocacy. Burkina Faso's decision could influence decisions far beyond its borders. Other African countries may begin reviewing how humanitarian organizations collect and use images of vulnerable people, particularly children. The movement also reflects a broader trend in which several African governments are introducing policies they say are intended to strengthen national sovereignty, increase oversight of NGOs, and ensure that international organizations operate according to national laws and ethics standards. Whether other African countries adopt similar measures remains to be seen. However, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. Across Africa, governments are paying closer attention not only to economic sovereignty but also to how African people are represented on the global stage. Burkina Faso's new regulations are about more than photography. They have opened a wider conversation about dignity, ethics, humanitarian work, and Africans' right to define how its people, especially its children, are portrayed. Supporters see the policy as a step toward ending exploitative imaginary. Others believe it will be important to ensure the rules also allowed humanitarian organizations to continue documenting genuine crises and delivering life-saving assistance. The challenge going forward will be finding the right balance between protecting human dignity and ensuring humanitarian needs remain visible to the world. What do you think? Should more African countries adopt similar rules to protect the dignity of vulnerable children, or could such restrictions make it harder for humanitarian organizations to raise awareness and support? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this report, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more in-depth coverage of African affairs, Pan-Africanism, and the continent's changing future.